Good Sunday morning to you. Today is February 15th, 2020. We're going to be rambling through recollections with Luke 13:10 through 17. Let me read it for you. Excuse me. One Sabbath day, as Jesus was teaching in the synagogue, he saw a woman who'd been crippled by an evil spirit. She'd been bent double for 18 years and was unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Dear woman, you are healed of your sickness." Then he touched her, and instantly she could stand straight. How she praised God! But the leader of the synagogue was indignant that Jesus had healed her on the Sabbath day. "There are 6 days of the week for working," he said to the crowd. "Come on those days to be healed, not on the Sabbath." But the Lord replied, "You hypocrites! Each of you works on the Sabbath day. Don't you untie your ox or your donkey from its stall on a Sabbath day and lead it out for water? This dear woman, a daughter of Abraham, has been held in bondage by Satan for 18 years. Isn't it right that she be released, even on the Sabbath?" This shamed his enemies, but all of the people rejoiced at the wonderful things he did. Okay, so just loving this verse. Let's see here. The first, this is just beautiful the way it starts with the healing of the woman, that he sees her and he heals her. And one of the thoughts that I had as I was experiencing prayer of recollection is that this is the Jesus within me, the Jesus who will reach out and heal. And isn't it interesting that he touches her? So many times he touches people. It's really making me think about my own life and about the power of touch. Side note, we've been talking about love languages in our family. Anna did that in her small group this week, and so we've been kind of getting to know each other in that way, getting to know ourselves. And I have only recently figured out that I think that one of my love languages is touch. And not like I love to touch people who aren't close to me. More it's the people who are really, really in my, my family mostly. I don't even always enjoy touch from just acquaintances. That's not, anyway. But that said, just stepping back and looking at the spiritual and the healing nature of touch and how Jesus didn't just heal people, he touched them. So I've just been thinking about that in my own life and kind of thinking maybe I should be a little more touching, and not just touching like superficially, like touching in a deep Jesus within me way, touching you. So anyway, back to prayer of recollection, thinking of this is the Jesus within me who reaches out and touches and heals. And I've just been praying for each of the people in my life and for myself that Jesus will touch them and heal them. And I know that sometimes he does this miraculously, like in this passage. But it seems like from my journey that this has often been a journey, that it's little touch after little touch. I really believe the prayer of recollection has been one of those touches for me, that just first that he led me to it and found me through it. I was reading Interior Castle. Teresa of Avila mentions it. And then daily I feel like he often gives me that healing touch as I spend time with him. And I love that in verse 13 where it says, how she praised God. And I just praise God for the healing touches he keeps giving me. And so let's keep moving on here. Picturing Jesus inside me. I'm just picturing him listening to this. How does it describe the guy in charge? The leader in charge of the synagogue. Okay, this must be an important guy. And just how, again, when Jesus hears this, he's not afraid. Jesus in me is not afraid of things that would scare most people and intimidate most people, because he's so much bigger than that. And he's not threatened by that. He sees the smallness and the evilness of it. And that's the Jesus that's inside me. It's that strong, powerful, aware, bigger Jesus. And he's not afraid to call out the evil. In fact, it's very interesting to me, this whole progression, how he's slamming down on the religious leaders and the Pharisees. It seems to me that this has happened kind of like correlated when it talks about, quite a few sections back, it talks about him making his journey to Jerusalem, where he knows he's going to be killed. And it seems like that marks a change in his approach. Before, when the Pharisees were being stupid, he just kind of either evaded them or kind of taught them a little bit, but was very indirect and was evasive, both in word and in action. Now he is really getting in their face. It's like he knows it's time to bring on the death. And he's just gotten his sword out of his sheath and he is just dueling, just section after section. So it's interesting to see what I perceive as his change in approach there, and very cool. Let's see here. The other thing that really struck me about this little part where Jesus says to them, "You hypocrites, each of you works on the Sabbath day," and then he describes how they work. Well, what this brought to mind for me was the work of Byron Katie. I love the work of Byron Katie. I mean, I'm not on board with all of her approach and all that, and don't take me as a strange advocate, but she had some really good stuff. And so, if they had been doing the work, as she calls her stuff, they could have examined this thought that says, basically, Jesus works on the Sabbath. Also, the underlying thought behind that being he's bad or wrong or whatever the judgmental word you want to use is, because he works on the Sabbath. If they'd done her work, they would have done the turnaround on that and asked themselves, I work on the Sabbath. And, if they could have been honest with themselves, they wouldn't have had to have all this happen. They could have seen that they are doing the very thing that they criticize others for. And so it's just an encouragement to me to keep that practice active in my life when I feel like other people are messing up, not doing things the good way, the right way, God's way, to keep the lens on my self-examination. And so that was kind of cool. Let's see here. What else did we want to... Oh, yeah, look at this. So he is so brilliant. Look at this. He says, "Don't you untie your ox or your donkey from its stall on the Sabbath and lead it out for water." Like, look what he did there. He calls himself the living water. And then the example that he chose is, you're willing to lead your animal to water. Here, this woman surely should be allowed to be led to water, the living water, the true water. So that's just really cool that he did that. And I also thought it was ironic that he was teaching in the synagogue and they didn't get him in trouble for teaching, probably because they taught in the synagogue on Sabbath, but he did get in trouble for healing. So again, just the selectivity about what they would decide they would and wouldn't call work, and how they were really blind to that. And like, I get that, because I think there's a lot that I'm blind to in my own life, and I'm just praying that God will keep showing me that. And then I was thinking more about if you took it to the extreme, what would it mean to not work on the Sabbath? Well, you wouldn't be able to feed yourself. In fact, you probably wouldn't be able to get out of bed. You would just have to lay in bed if you weren't working. And that would mean you couldn't go to the bathroom. So you'd have to lay in bed all day in your own waste, not eating, and not doing anything, which I don't think is ever what God intended. So it's just interesting, a question to ask myself, how do I live in the spirit of the law as God intended and not in the letter of the law? Because the letter of the law would be crushing and ridiculous. So, just kind of a food for thought there. So that's all we have today for the Ramblings from Recollection. Happy Sunday. See you guys.